Well, hello everybody. I am Louise Eddington. I am the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology, and I offer astrological consultations and also a membership community called the Venus Enchantment Community to help you really get connected with your soul's purpose and to give you creative guidance for your life. Excuse me. Before we move on, I'd love to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I'd really love to get to 1,000 subscribers. I'm not far off. I'm less than 150 subscribers away. The thing is, once you get to 1,000 subscribers, the YouTube algorithms really kick in and it grows and grows and grows from there. At this point, it's really painful. So if you enjoy my guidance, then please subscribe and maybe consider hitting the little bell to get notified when I upload new content. And if you really like the content, consider sharing the video and asking your friends to subscribe to my channel too. And let's dive in then, because we've got a lot to cover. I'm going to try and slow the pace down. I think I'm aware last time I was really like blah, 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 because these air signs kind of kick my air moon in. But this is the second. This is the second of 2 Aquarius full moons. And this period is really turning out to be quite the transformative period of 2021. I wasn't really very clear on what was coming when I did the overview for the year. Sometimes when you get in the thick of it, you feel it more, and wow, things are, and also, of course, you know, I'm always learning new information. I'm always taking in new insights that come through. So we had the Aquarius full moon on July the 23rd at 1 degree Aquarius, and 1, the number of new beginnings. I'm not going to go back. You could go back and listen to the previous podcast episodes if you like. But it was a very strong one. We had a lot of planets around that 1 degree mark. The full moon was conjunct Chariklo, who I'm finding is becoming very important to me. She's the grace spinner. I see her as the weaver of stories. I see her as, she was Chiron's wife. I can kind of see them as a husband, wife, mentor to the gods and goddesses team. I picture Chariklo as weaving and spinning as she tells stories, as she guides the gods and goddesses. And she was conjunct that full moon at the 1 degree of new beginnings. Okay. So that was a very important full moon. Then we've just had the new moon in Leo right in the middle of these 2 Aquarius full moons. And the new moon in Leo was on 8th of the 8th, the Lion's Gate, which in my opinion, there's a lot of ungrounded information going around the internet about the Lion's Gate. However, thanks to astrologer Divine Harmony, who's done a lot of research on this, the actual heliacal rise of Sirius, who is thought to be connected with Isis, and which is also kind of Magdalene. It's the real goddess, shunned energy. The actual heliacal rising of Sirius in Giza over the pyramids is on August the 8th. It's at different dates in other parts of the world, but in Giza, where there's a kind of a concentration of energies, it is on August the 8th. And so we had a new moon, but the new moon was not at 8 degrees, but it was on August the 8th, and with the heliacal rise of Sirius. And Divine Harmony says that the heliacal rise of Sirius in Giza in Egypt has been on the 8th since about 1950s, and it will shift at some point, but it's on that day now. And this does suggest that there is something perhaps in this period, because we're in this absolutely tremendous time of change, and there's several pointers to the rising of the divine feminine again, and I've talked about it a lot. So that was the Leo new moon. That was actually on August the 8th, as I said, and it was at 16 degrees of Leo. Okay, so it was 2 8s. So there you go. And now we have another full moon in Aquarius. And this can be called a blue moon, or, you know, it's got various names. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that we're getting double the dose of this Aquarius energy in this period. Okay, a full moon at 1 degree, and now this full moon that's coming up, the next full moon, is going to be on August the 22nd at 29 degrees of Aquarius. So let's just look at that for a second. It's 29 degrees, and 2 plus 9 is 11, which is a master number. And then it's on August the 22nd, which is also a master number. So it's kind of a double, it's kind of a double master numbers full moon. So it's 11 and 22. So 11 and 22. 11 is a gateway, you know, most people know this, and 22 is a very powerful number too. So bear with me. I've just got somebody interrupting me, so just bear with me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that little break, little somebody at the door. Anyway, we have number 11. So it's 29, 11. 11 is the master teacher. It's about illumination. It's about enlightenment. It's about inspiration, psychic abilities. The ruler of the master number 11 is said to be Neptune, and that's quite relevant too to what I'm going to speak about today astrologically. If you want to tune into this energy on this full moon, you know, Neptunian kind of colours are very appropriate, as are Aquarian colours. So, you know, shimmery, silvery, mother of pearl kind of colours, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so we have all of that tuned in. Then, so we have a master teacher, and we also have the master builder number. The master builder 22, it's on the 22 day, is about dreams made manifest. It's about ancient wisdom, realization, force of nature. And so we have here the ability to make dreams come real. All right. So I'll talk more about the numbers when I come to look at the astrology chart, but let's pull you a card first of all for this full moon. And honestly, I think with the last full moon and the new moon on 8/8, is everything is coming together to indicate that we are in a period of real growth. Add to the fact that we are moving into the age of Aquarius, even though we don't really know when it starts. You know, this Aquarian energy is really calling to us. Add to that, we have this ongoing Saturn-Uranus square all this year and into early next year, that the traditional and modern rulers of Aquarius, we also had the Saturn, Jupiter-Saturn great conjunction at 0 Aquarius. We've got other conjunctions coming up at 0 Aquarius. The Aquarian energy is just really powerful, and it's something we are learning. And the Aquarian energy is very innovative, very inventive, very futuristic, but also has this energy of being quite liking Aquarius is about antiques. It's about the old ways, but the old crafts and the good things bringing in. So bringing the old ways into the modern world in a way, in a modern way, if you like, you know. I look at the rise of kind of shamanic practices, shamanic type practices, but integrating them into the new way. I've talked about it before. And I'm thinking of things like indigenous fire management techniques as well. We're learning that we could learn a lot from what we thought was kind of primitive before, maybe. We, meaning we in the West particularly. But bringing in, you know, really old techniques and learning from the past as to how we can help move forward. So let's have a card for this lunation. Okay. Now we have the moon. And I like the moon because this card in the Thoth Tarot or Thoth Tarot, whichever, is the Pisces card. And we have the Pisces symbol down there. Okay. Oh yeah. Which side? This side. That's the Pisces symbol. I'm still learning what these ones mean. These are from the Kabbalah. But anyway, the moon, you can see, is kind of like the pillars into enlightenment. And this below is a scarab beetle down here. Okay, and the scarab beetle is a very spiritual symbol in Egypt, and interestingly that we are using the Thoth Tarot, and I started talking about this heliac or rise of Sirius over the pyramids in Giza. I think we have a lot we could learn from ancient civilizations like Egypt. It's certainly not the only one. But I've seen the scarab beetle referred to as the true Christ consciousness, which could also be seen as the Pisces energy. It's the real energy of higher love. It's the energy of trust and faith and kind of agape kind of love as well. But if we think about that energy, it's you know, it's not. It's not completely, it's the energy of the spiritual teacher. Let's put it that way. And here we have guarding it, the two pillars. They mean various things in various traditions, but this is the 11. Look at this, the 11, all right? The gateway through to enlightenment, if you like, or spiritual peace. You know, some of these words get very loaded, enlightenment and all that kind of stuff. It implies that, you know, when people use enlightenment, they often use it as a judgment thing to say that they are more enlightened than others. But let's say spiritual awakening, spiritual awareness, just this awareness of being connected with all that is. That's very Piscean too. Now this is the moon card though, of course, and here we have the crescent moon and the full moon coming up below, and the moon in astrology is very much about empathy and emotions and receptivity. It's very associated with the divine feminine, okay. Divine Harmony, talking about the rise of Sirius, she talks about the rise of the solar feminine, because in other cultures the feminine has been the sun. Now I would say that, and she probably does somewhere, so I'm not like arguing with her, we all have masculine and feminine within us. We all have yin yang within us. We all have night and day within us. So this is perhaps more about the rising of realizing that we all have every energy within us. But it is about the rising of the divine feminine, which has been squashed by the very yang day energy of the age that we're leaving. Okay, so this is beautiful. And this fits with moving into this new age. All right. There's so much more that could be said about the card. the things they're holding, the keys, the dogs. Interestingly, you know, you could see that these are guarding kind of the underworld, and you know, there's a lot of talk about ascension in the world. Well, really, ascension is descension, is descent into ourselves, into our humanness, into, you know, becoming whole, realizing the connectedness of our humanity, because this is all we have. There might be something else afterwards, but this is all we know now. This is our consciousness. You know, we are on this earth. We are human. We are here to have this human experience. There may be something after, but, you know, we may as well kind of embody what we've got right now. Okay, so anyway, my little lecture about that. So, that's a lot already about the numbers and about the card. So, let's look at this chart itself. Okay, so it is at 29 degrees and 36 minutes of Aquarius. Now it's forming a T-square with Sedna. Sedna is in Taurus at the anaretic degree, 29 degrees. Sedna has will be at the 29th degree on and off for quite some time. She will move back into the 8th degree, 28th degree, sorry, but then she'll fairly quickly move back to the 29th degree. So she is finishing up her time in Taurus. Okay, I can't remember when she moves. We'll talk about that later. But either way, this is a very anaretic degree full moon, and I will talk about what that means in a minute. So we've got this T-square from the moon, the sun to Sedna. Jupiter is conjunct the moon as well, so that Jupiter expands everything he touches. So he's expanding the energy of this lunation to make it very big, and I'll talk about what all this means in a minute. Other important aspects that we have are we have a kite. We have a kite that's formed by an air grand trine with Venus in Libra at 7 degrees Libra. The North Node at 7 degrees of Gemini, which is conjunct Ceres at 5 Gemini, and Saturn at 8 degrees of Aquarius. Okay, so and then the other, so we've got this triangle, and then we have the South Node still conjunct Juno in Sagittarius to form a kite formation. And we've had this kite formation coming and going with various planets for a little while, so I'll talk a little bit about that as well. Another thing that we have is a trine from Uranus in Taurus, who actually stations a retrograde on August the 20th, so 2 days before this full moon. Uranus turns retrograde. It's still at its retrograde degree, clearly. So basically, Uranus is very powerful on this full moon. So if you've noticed, I mentioned Saturn is involved in the kite, and here we have Uranus, the two rulers of the moon, of the full moon. Uranus is in a trine aspect to a trio in Virgo that looks a little bit uncomfortable, and I will talk about that as well. Hygeia, Mars and Mercury, with Mars being pretty much exactly trine Uranus. Okay, the trine between Mars and Uranus will occur just before this full moon, right on the Uranus station, so I'll talk about that as well. Other things, we also have Neptune is conjunct Pallas Athena. Pallas Athena is coming back to catch up with Neptune, as they are both retrograde in Pisces. I think that's very relevant because it's connected with the numbers, it's connected with the card I pulled. And I think this is a very spiritual awakening period, a very awakening to the connectedness of all kind of period as well. So what else? I think that's all we're going to look at. So we may as well dive in and look at what we're going to talk about. So the first thing I want to talk about is this anaretic degree. Now, I can't do any better myself, so I am going to go to my friend Leah Whitehorse's article on her Lua Astrology website. It was an article that was published in Dell Horoscope magazine, which is no longer published, and it's called The 29th Degree, Tales from the Threshold. So it's on Leah's website now. So she talks about the 29th degree being like the ultimate no man's land. She quotes Anthony Louis, who was one of her teachers, as saying, "A planet in a critical degree is like a person wandering through a demilitarized zone between North and South Korea. It's a risky place to be." And, you know, there's been a lot of fear-based stuff said about the 29th degree, but there's no doubt that it is a liminal degree. In Hori astrology, or in many astrologies, Hori is where you ask a question. It's associated, it's often said to be a void of course point for any planetary placement, because there's often no further aspects before the planet leaves its sign. The action has already happened, so that means there's nothing further that can be done, and fate or karma is in motion. Okay. In evolutionary astrology, the planets or angles at 29 degrees are often said to mean that the planet is concluding a spiritual lesson. So it can manifest as a feeling of urgency, like something must be done. I don't know about you, I'm feeling that with regard to a few things on this planet. It's kind of all or nothing, critical, now or never. And you know, this very morning as I record this on August the 9th, after just after the new moon on August the 8th, we had the IPCC climate report, which was not unexpected, but, you know, quite frightening in its intensity. So it feels like we're at this critical point where something must be done on our planet, in a few ways, not just climate-wise. So you may be feeling that sense of urgency yourself. I know I'm getting feelings of it. I've never in my 61 years really been a gardener, but I've got this urge now to get a raised bed and start growing some of my own vegetables. It feels like we have to move this way. You know, it feels like if it is to be, it's up to each of us individually to play our part in changing the way we live on this planet. Okay. So she gives some attributes and associations for the 29th degree. Heightened expression, overcompensation. It can be a lonely, vulnerable place too. I can have a feeling like, you know, we've got a lot of weighty responsibility on our shoulders as well, because we don't have much support. But it's also catharsis, wisdom and mastery, a spark of magic, a harbinger of change, a catalyst, a crisis, and leading the field. It's isn't that interesting? Okay. Now then, we also have Sedna at the 29th degree. So we have the moon at 29th degree of Aquarius, which is the sign of humanitarianism, the group, the future, innovation, all those kind of things. But it's also it's a very authoritarian sign. It is a fixed sign. It has been associated with authoritarianism. So we have the yin and the yang of every sign, and it sounds like this, it feels like this 29th degree of this sign is saying, which way are we going to go? This is a crisis. Which way are, is authoritarian, and I'm asking questions here. So is authoritarianism, if it's for the greater good, always a bad thing? It's also a sign representing freedom in many ways, to a degree. But is this about personal freedom, or is this freedom for the group? Because it's a group-oriented sign. Okay. The opposite is the sun in Leo at the 29th degree. That's about sovereignty and but also leadership. And it's about integrating and balancing this opposition between that two. Because what is personal sovereignty without group responsibility? These are the questions we're being asked to ask ourselves. And I talk about it a lot in terms of the climate because of this T-square to Sedna. Now, Sedna has been associated with climate change. All right. We have, I saved a post and I cannot find it. In fact, I know where to find it because I did copy and paste it. So I'm just going to get that message up in a second. And I got a new subscriber on my YouTube in just as I was asking you all to subscribe to my YouTube. But anyway, it's there was a post in a Facebook group I'm in by a guy called Michael O'Reilly. I don't know who he is, but he said, and I'm going to read it to you, and this is why I'm talking about this, it being at this turning point, this liminal critical stage for climate change. And, we could say that, the way we live and the pandemic and all these things are associated with all of this. So, Sedna's discovery chart plots global warming, he said on July the 19th. Last week brought a dramatic turning point in the effort to slow down global warming and the associated extreme weather events. The US and EU governments made simultaneous proposals to radically cut carbon emissions, blah, blah, blah. Astrologers have been looking for a horoscope, planetary cycle, or other means to track global warming or climate change and related developments. But how does one connect last week's record flooding in Germany and drought in the American Southwest, or the melting of glaciers in the higher altitudes? He kind of goes on, blah, blah, blah. If we consider that the Earth is now going through a global warming phase not seen since the emergence from the last ice age 10 to 11,000 years ago, we have a planetary significator, Sedna. Sedna takes some 10,500 years to orbit the Sun and was first sighted by astronomers on November the 13th, 2003. Sedna's myth and meaning are derived from the Inuit culture of northern Alaska and Canada, where she is known as the goddess of the ocean. Her discovery chart helps us to track and forecast events related to global warming. Data is from Jennifer Gale's book, The Return of Planet Sedna, blah, blah, blah. And the time is set for 10:32 p.m. Palomar, California. In the discovery chart, Sedna is the most elevated planet, which is always important. It forms a T-square with its opposition to the Sun and square to Uranus in Aquarius back then. This configuration is a fateful karmic setup since the lunar nodes are also involved, and he talks more about all of the astrology of the things. So we need to become familiar with the Sedna discovery chart. Okay. to do this, but I find, and I will try and talk more about that moving forward, but we have to remember that this is the anaretic degree, and when a full moon is aspecting the anaretic degree, it's really, really important. So I'm just looking at Sedna's, and by the way, he does say that Sedna does promise ultimate success, since she forms a magical grand sextile configuration with the Moon, Jupiter, Mars, Chiron, and the Sun. So there is absolute hope, okay, but I need to look into this far more. And it will take many shocking catastrophes to break through complacency. Well, I think this period is one where this full moon is activating this critical 29th degree, which incidentally is called the Weeping Sisters degree, because, this degree is indicates that there's something to weep about. So we're kind of having it thrown in our face that the way we live is not a healthy way to live, that we must bring change. Now, I do actually quickly want to share the discovery chart of Sedna with you. When Sedna was discovered, Uranus was at almost 29 degrees of Aquarius, where we have this full moon. Okay, so to my mind, this is really activating this Sedna chart. Of course, where Sedna is now is squaring Uranus in that degree. Sedna was up here at 17 degrees Taurus, which is only 3 degrees from where Uranus is stationing retrograde right now. This full moon period is a major turning point for humanity. I am hopeful that the awakening qualities of the energies are going to awaken us to something pretty major. All right. So I don't want to go too much into detail with that. I want to give you more guidance about this full moon. So, deep breath. So it's a major turning point, a critical point for humanity as we move into the age of Aquarius. It's connected with climate change. It's connected with other things, as we'll see. For you personally, if you have anything around the last couple of degrees of any sign, but particularly fixed signs, okay, and the fixed signs are Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius, then you'll be really feeling this full moon. All right, but I do know I'm feeling it already in this whole month's period as I record this. Now, I mentioned, in fact, let's look at Uranus. So I mentioned that Uranus stationed retrograde 2 days before this full moon, so it's really still stationed, and is in a trine aspect to Mars, which that aspect is exact just before the full moon. Mars at 14 degrees of Virgo, and Hygeia at 12 degrees, Hygeia being global health, and Mercury, the ruler of Virgo at 18 degrees Virgo. So they're all in Virgo in an Earth grand trine. And Virgo, to some degree, is about health. All right, health, holistic health, being whole, and that could be looked at as creating wholeness in the planet. Uranus in Taurus, we have known all along that Uranus in Taurus would bring changes in our relationship to material world and the earth and monetary matters and the like. And Taurus all also being the body. So it feels like there's, we know that there is another pandemic kind of crisis, panic, whatever you want to call it. I'm trying not to give my opinion about this here. It is what it is. No matter what you think of the whole thing, there is that kind of this aggressive kind of variant that's going around. Mars is bringing that aggression. Uranus is going to bring us some shocks. The good thing is it's an Earth trine. So that might give us some new and innovative treatments and discoveries as well. Because Hygeia is not only global health, it's health and hygiene. We might have some new innovations around health and hygiene, some new information come in about treatments, some new information that comes in about how to deal with it and protect ourselves. I think of the hand washing thing, but perhaps, to a greater degree. And so, that's both kind of a bit aggressive looking and also shocking looking, but also very innovative looking. So that's another sign of it. Okay, and Uranus, of course, is near that. What was I saying? Is near where Sedna was in her discovery chart. So not only about the pandemic, but we may suddenly, I kind of am becoming convinced that, we perhaps are going to find some new kind of very innovative energy. But I think back to Tesla, not the Tesla cars now, Nikola Tesla. And his, I'm not very, I'm not a complete scientist, but his theories about electricity and things that were not, he was ignored for what we have now. It perhaps might be a revisiting to somebody like his ideas, that may produce very clean energy and may help us to live more cleanly on the planet. So it's got that kind of energy too. So I'm very hopeful about that also. Of course, I could be being Pollyanna. As I record this, Venus is opposite Jupiter. But Jupiter's in Aquarius and conjunct the moon on this full moon. So there's going to be some very big ideas floating around. Huge ideas. And of course, some people will see some of what's going on as authoritarian from both sides. It's such a polarized time. But anyway, then I mentioned we have a kite configuration, and that's an air grand trine. More ideas pointing at the North Node in Gemini, which is new ideas. Open your mind. I'm just listening for the second time in a week to a book called Think Again. Is it Think Again? I can highly recommend this book, by the way. Think Again. Yeah, that's what it's called. Think Again by Adam Grant. The Power of Knowing What You Don't Know. This is the energy of this time. Okay, there's a lot of air energy floating around, which is new, innovative ideas, being open-minded, and that doesn't mean allowing yourself to be bombarded with, people on Facebook saying, here, do your own research for this, from either side. This is about real, true scientific mode of investigation. This is about having your ideas and your hypotheses, but being aware that being able to shift your ideas when you're presented with new evidence. And so this is a lot of ideas floating around. It's got Venus in Libra, so it's very creative. Saturn retrograde in Aquarius as part of it is revisiting and mastering some old ideas. So again, it's got that element of bringing perhaps some previously discarded ideas or ideas that were poo-pooed in the past, revisiting them and bringing them in and thinking, oh, this is perhaps how we move forward. And then the last part of the kite is the South Node in Gemini, in Sagittarius, is about releasing the dogma, releasing being stuck and fixed to those ideas. Sagittarius is a wonderful sign. I should know. I'm Sagittarius, 4 planets in Sagittarius, and my rising sign. But we can be a bit dogmatic. And we can be very much, I am right. So I love this book. If you are open to reading it, and it really talks about how to talk about things, how to open your mind, how to not persuade others, but how to ask perhaps questions that would let them start opening their minds and thinking of different things. Okay. So that's a whole lot of stuff I just said about all of this. Okay, so I'm just going to just set for a second. The other thing that's going on this full moon that I have to talk about is 5 days after the full moon, Pluto and Eris will be exactly square for the 4th or 5th time of 5 times. And this is the first time, I've mentioned it before, since I think it was called the Axial Age. I've still got the page. Axial Age, AXIAL Age. That was a real time of upheaval, a real time of growth as well. And it was a time that set the spiritual foundations for the whole period since. It was a time that was approximately 900 to 200 BCE. That was the last time Pluto and Eris squared each other in Capricorn and Aries, with Pluto a closing square, with Pluto more moving towards Eris. Okay. German philosopher Carl Theodor Jaspers said that the spiritual foundations of humanity were laid simultaneously and independently, and these are the foundations upon which humanity still subsists today. Now, I've noticed a big thing about Pluto and Eris with the pandemic, with peaks. It's, I hesitate to use that thing of everything comes to teach us a lesson. But I do think the pandemic is part of a big chaos thing to teach us that we are not living in alignment. And that brings me back to, and I did notice that the Pluto and Eris squares roughly aligned with a lot of peaks in the pandemic. The first of 5 squares was on January the 20th, 2020, just before everything really exploded. So I'm really not surprised that we're having this new peak or crisis in that area. Okay. Now, talking about being out of alignment as well, I talked about the kite. Ceres is conjunct that North Node, and Ceres is going to hover around this North Node for quite some time because of her retrograde. She's going to retrograde over it. She's going to cross over the North Node and go back over it. She's going to dip back into Taurus briefly, but right now she's on this full moon on August the 22nd, 2021. She's at 5 degrees of Gemini, conjunct that North Node in this kite. And I think that is a message about us being out of alignment with Gaia, with Mother Earth as well, because Ceres is the Great Mother. Ceres, she ruled the harvest, the crops, the grain. Okay. She also ruled, she was connected with grief and forgiveness, and there's a lot of collective grief. And I think we're being asked to let this, collective grief, let this collective forgiveness come into our awareness as well, and forgive ourselves for not knowing what we were doing, as humans, as an individual. We kind of, I remember growing up, we you know, you didn't think about the as a kid, climate change was not mentioned, yet it was working away. You know, it was great, all these marvellous innovations. We had to stop burning coal at one point in the cities because of the smog, but we didn't realise what it was doing to the climate, and so on and so forth, you know. But when you know better, you do better, to quote the marvellous Maya Angelou. And I think Ceres is a very nurturing kind of energy, because it is what nurtures us. We are about being asked to learn what nurtures us collectively with this connection with the North Node from Ceres, and this being all part of this big picture on this full moon. So overall, you know, I think this is a very powerful full moon collectively. I think more than individually. I think a lot of us will be, like me, suddenly feeling this urge to kind of grow our own food where we may not have done before. I've seen other friends doing it too. You know, a lot of people are shifting their thinking about the world they were in. I'm going to be very careful how I put this. I actually started a thread on my Facebook about it because of that book. And you know, a lot of people are realizing that, you know, you can't throw one thing out and throw the other one out. You know, there's still a lot of polarity, but a lot of people are coming more to the middle of saying, say for in the area of health, you can trust some of the science and some of the pharmacological medicines, while still liking the holistic medicines and realizing that that too has its limitations. You can also, you know, trust some of the pharmacological medicines without realizing that can go too far, and not liking the companies that create them. So, you know, there's all that changing your mind and rethinking thing going on. So I'm not telling you what to think. I'm trying to be really careful how I do that. I'm just trying to give you ideas of what I'm witnessing out there, of people really beginning to kind of change their mind in many ways. So what are you going to be changing your mind about? You know, what do you feel? I'd love to ask you the question, actually. I posed the question on my Facebook page from the book, and oh, I just realised a friend of mine had disabled her Facebook because she did say she was going to. So I can't find the question. Or can I? Da, 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 da. Oh goodness, this is so annoying. Now I want to ask you, but basically it was asking the question, because we've had this North Node in Gemini since last May, and we've been in this crisis, and it's kind of reaching this peak. It's basically asking, you know, without judgment, where have you shifted your mindset? Where have you changed your mind, or where do you feel your mind changing in this time? It's a good question to ask, and I would challenge you to read that book if you're interested too. It's very interesting. He uses the scientific method to talk about changing your mind. And it's in terms of all kinds of things, so not just what we've got going on currently. So it's a powerful full moon. So I do want to emphasize that it's absolutely huge. A full moon, not only at the anaretic degree itself, but also square to a planet that's at the anaretic degree, and one of the newly discovered dwarf planets that's expanding our conscious knowledge, our consciousness in that sense, is just huge. So be aware that, that you may feel a little kind of critical, like things are critical on this kind of full moon coming up to it. But, dive in, feel into it, and now let's look at the symbols to give you a little bit of inspiration. So let's look at the Sabian symbol first for Aquarius 30, because we always go up. So I'm going to read from mindfire.ca. The symbol is deeply booted in the past. I think it means rooted in the past of a very ancient culture. And I've talked about that, right? So let's deeply rooted in the past of a very ancient culture, a spiritual personhood in which many individual minds are merged into the glowing light of a unanimous consciousness is revealed to one who has emerged successfully from his metamorphosis. The keynote was the ability for the person with an open mind and a deep feeling for self-transcendence to come in contact with higher forms of existence. Maybe it'll be aliens, who knows? But you get the idea. I'm going to read the whole thing to you for once. The originally recorded Sabian symbol stated the field of Ardath in bloom, and that referred to a scene in an occult novel by Marie Corelli centering upon ancient Babylon. So this could be the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, right? So the reference may well have been a blind, in as much as Mark Jones had stressed his inner contact with the brotherhood. Oh, that's different. A spiritual personhood constitutes a state of multi-unity, i.e. a multiplicity of individuals. If one thinks of the paths they trod to reach their final metamorphosis, but a unity of consciousness and soul, thus unanimity in anima, meaning soul. In this spiritual whole, each unit is a recognizable form or entity if one looks at it with the eyes of personality, but when seen through a unified spiritual vision or from a distance, the whole appears to be one single area of radiant light. Similarly, when studied by the modern physicist, light can be apprehended either as a stream of particles or as one continuous wave. Whether it is seen as one or the other depends on the point of view. He says, at any level, this is a symbol of spiritual group fulfillment, of conscious totality of being. And I would check out my interview with Shallan Harkin, the poet, the mystic poet that I recorded earlier today. She talks about growing up in the Baha'i faith and about that being about the connectedness of all. And it's not the only faith that thinks that, of course, no. But this is coming back, this connectedness of being. Some of these beliefs that we kind of lost in the separatism of the culture we've grown up in, they are coming back. So anyway, that's that symbol. Gives me hope. I don't know about you. Now let's leave you with the Chandra symbol. A large pool filled with water lilies in bloom. Integration and synthesis, putting it all together. Creative intelligence at its best. Having gone on ahead and seen what can be, yet suspending your vision so that freedom and open-endedness are honoured. Living on many planes at once and in intricate refinement, you have the ability to hold in place as many independent variables as become relevant, an especially distinctive quality of unqualified or unconditional regard and respect for one and all. Universal brotherhood and sisterhood as the impulse of the future. Active now. So the overall message of it all really is about this. Perhaps this crisis will finally start to bring people together. these opposites, this separatist thing that we've had going on, these polarities and these fightings and these arguments. And I'm not saying I've not been a part of that, but maybe this critical thing will, or maybe something will emerge, like this metamorphosis thing that will bring us all together and realize there is common ground and we have to pull together. So maybe, even if you don't get the book, think again. Maybe think about where you can find common ground with those you disagree with, and let's start to think differently, which is very Aquarian, and move forward. And I think that's kind of the crisis of this full moon, really, is to kind of wake us up to, or shine a damn big light on the fact we're all a universal personhood, and how can we move forward like that. So as a reminder, my name is Louise Eddington. I am the Cosmic Owl of Cosmic Owl Astrology. Please subscribe to my channel. Please come follow me on Cosmic Owl Astrology on Facebook or Instagram. I'm on both. You can follow my personal profile on Facebook. I prefer to do that unless I've met people in person, but I welcome followers on my personal profile. There's a good amount of stuff that I post publicly. And let's all support each other in this common personhood to really kind of step out of the minutiae, because Aquarius is about the bigger picture, big hopes, wishes, goals, and the bigger picture. Step above, take this bird's eye view of this collective personhood, and let's create a better world. Much love.